My allergies are crazy
Same.
today. All right, and we are live. Hi, my name is Svika Sarkar. I am a AI ethics program manager here at Business School of AI, and this is our weekly WED series where we have speakers from all around the world who are experts in their field come and talk to us about what they're working on or what they're interested in right now. And today we have John C. Havens, and he's going to talk to us about um, sustainability and responsible AI. So, John, welcome. Please take it away. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Sorry, Deepika, can you stop sharing the screen so we can see your face?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we're ready.
Thank you. And did you want me to do the presentation, Sudha, or did you want to say anything first? Or
No, it's fine. It's Deepika is the host, so I'm going to pin her back here.
Yeah. No, John, please take it away. I'm so excited. I've heard you speak at NeurIPS. I really am excited to hear you speak today.
okay, cool. Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Devika and Sudha, for having me. Adam, Elam, and Renee, great to meet you. If I've mispronounced any names, my bad. And I'm going to talk for about 35 or so minutes. And then if there's time for questions, great. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. So let me make sure I can share my PowerPoint, which I think I should be able to. Okay, can you all see my screen? Is it full screen?
Yes, we
Yes.
can see it.
So I'm going to be talking about sustainability, but I'm going to get to it through artificial intelligence, as it were. And artificial intelligence for responsible AI, prioritizing people and planet as the metrics for societal success. So the sort of not a formula, as it were, but what does responsible AI need, and the that's all described here in the presentation is a focus on planet and people. That's how responsible AI happens. So to get to specifics about that, a little background about me. In 2016, I published a book, or wrote a book that came out in 2016. It's this one. It's called Artificial Intelligence. And the subtitle is Embracing Our Humanity to Maximize Machines. And I've been writing for The Guardian and Mashable and some other outlets. And I'm not a data scientist. I'm not entirely sure why I got fascinated with artificial intelligence back in 2010, 11. Probably because I watch a lot of science fiction movies, and I was like, this seems like it could be a concern. And I just started calling people as part of my research and reporting, asking if they knew if there was a code of ethics for AI, somewhat naively. And it led to this book. And I was invited by IEEE, where I work now on staff, to sort of explore and create what turned into sort of a code of ethics. And I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But this question is one that I want to start off as a framing for our conversation today, which is, it's a philosophical question, but it's also a literal question, which is, how will machines know what we value if we don't know ourselves? And here I mean machines, algorithms, basically any tools that either formally through surveillance or formally through other ways of advertising, tracking, where in one sense, it's not really a joke. I talk about this in my book. What happens when these machines or algorithms know more about us than we know about ourselves? It's true. It's kind of challenging, at least for me, when I think about it. Like, I don't remember what I ate 3 days ago. I don't track what I eat at that level, but someone probably does if I purchased it online or if I purchased something using my phone. And then there's data about the patterns of what I eat and all that, and it's how I'm advertised to. So there are aspects of my life that I don't know as well as certain others do who track me. But then the question is also, how do we want to, as people and as a society, be at the center of our values. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So IEEE, where I work, it's the world's largest technological association. As of today, there's about 500,000 members in about 160 countries. It was founded by Thomas Edison over 100 years ago. And this is our tagline, advancing technology for humanity. And by the way, I work in the standards area within IEEE, and IEEE created the Wi-Fi and other standards. Standards start off as groups of people gathering in working groups to discuss both technological operability, and in the case of standards, I'll tell you about in terms of AI and ethics, how those work within society. And along those lines, this idea of advancing technology for humanity, when I first came to IEEE in late 2015, the different colleagues that we were working on together, we really dug into this word. In English, at least, the logic here is that you have to know how you are advancing technology for humanity. What does that actually mean? Otherwise, it's a pretty statement, let's advance technology for humanity, but who, which humans, what regions of the planet? Is it everybody? Is it just rich people? Is it everybody? And how are you doing it? How do you actually advance technology? And what do you mean by advancing, right? Philosophers, and I'm not technically a philosopher by training, but I've loved asking questions my whole adult life. And ethics, applied ethics and AI, that's really what you do, is you ask questions and frame them in different ways. And this is a key question. What do we actually mean by responsible AI? So the work that I helped architect and lead, eventually with about 700 volunteers globally, is resulted in this paper called Ethically Aligned Design. And the subtitle you can see here, it's a little small, A Vision for Prioritizing Human Well-Being with Autonomous and Intelligent Systems. The paper talks about sustainable development. So this also includes the planet. And I mentioned before, prioritizing people and planet as the metrics for responsible AI. And what happened is in 2016, we released a first version of this document. The 2019 version is the most recent version. And even though it doesn't formally include Gen AI, the entire document is very evergreen. You can see the chapters that are listed here. All these things still apply, right? Meaning AI and large language models, the foundations of things like bias or effective computing, or how to embed values, as it were, into autonomous systems, which actually means recognizing the human values that when these technologies function, how people respond to them. Anyway, the point is the paper is evergreen. It's Creative Commons. It's available for free. I'll include the link in the chat room before I'm done. But I want to focus on the three top principles you can see here. These were voted on by the volunteers to be in order of how one should think about autonomous and intelligent systems. And by the way, you'll notice that I'm not saying artificial intelligence. I'm saying artificial intelligence systems. The point being, it's critical to remember, and both IEEE and the OECD use this term AI systems. All algorithms, any architecture of AI runs on data, oftentimes human data. So when you add that word systems, it reminds people, just like a car functions on electricity or gas. It doesn't just sit there, right? The same way that the key thing about generative AI, any AI tools, is at some point, human data started everything going, right? So intellectual property issues of agency for humans, et cetera. That's a key thing to remember. The other thing to remember is that there are many architectures for artificial intelligence. There's deep learning, active inference is a newer form that I really am quite fond of. Inverse reinforcement learning, all these are different architectures or methodologies. And large language models, generative AI, are just one type of methodology. The most recent and the most popular in the last couple of years, I believe, as you'll see in my presentation, the most problematic. I'm speaking as John. I should say I'm not speaking for all of IEEE by any means, but basically I'm advocating that people don't use generative AI basically at all. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But here I want to dig into these first three principles. They were voted on to be in this order: human rights, well-being, and data agency. What I've found in being around the world, in Beijing, in Tokyo, multiple parts of the States and Europe, there are a lot of wonderful AI principles. They oftentimes will have these different areas: transparency, accountability, etc. But when you focus on human and planetary rights first, and you're asking about data governance or the products or systems you're going to build, and you say, first and foremost, do we know that these tools are not going to harm humans of the planet? That's the first way to think about anything we do. And in terms of, say, generative AI, how data centers use water and energy, a lot of times there is harm being done, and how generative AI is being used, or created rather, because of data center use. But then the second question is also to ask, how do we improve? We use the word well-being here. Sometimes you'll hear the word flourishing. How do you improve the planet and people, right? If we just don't harm people, that is a key goal for engineers and data scientists and anyone in the responsible AI space. We can't harm knowingly. But if society stops there, right, how will machines know what we value if we don't know ourselves? I'm sitting here right now in a room where I'm not being actively harmed. You know, I'm breathing air. I have water near me. I'm safe. But am I flourishing? Do I have the opportunity to flourish? Flourishing means a sort of sense of one's longer, full, what's called life satisfaction. And part of what one has to have for flourishing as a person is a planet that is not just not being harmed, but that is safe for multiple generations. Anyway, human rights and planetary rights, the number one thing to focus on in any AI design, those two things. That's what people voted on. It's challenging. There's chapters that talk about this. In the business world, there's something called the Ruggie principles, to say, how do we think about human rights before we build things? And then well-being, I've kind of touched on that with regards to flourishing. When you're building something like a companion AI app, is a company using mental health standards to know that people aren't being harmed, right? You know, intentions are not responsible AI. Intentions are somewhat meaningless when it comes to keeping people accountable. I can say that I wanted my companion AI app to not harm people, but if I don't have psychologists, mental health experts, sociologists on the team creating an app, then in one sense, I'm probably going to harm people. So intentions are not, taking care of people. Finally, data agency, I'll talk about more in a moment. It really means, do people understand? And the answer is basically no. How important their data is. And can we have responsible AI if the tools that are being used, especially with Gen AI today, are irresponsible? The people designing them are irresponsible because they aren't training people about how important their data is. So some of these slides I'm going to go through quicker now. These are the standards, they're called the 7000 series. IEEE numbers their standards. And the 7000 series I helped create. I was the founding chair of 7000 and 7010. This is the first suite of standards of their kind in IEEE. They marry or put together social and technical issues. For instance, bias, 7003. You can't study bias without having people who have expertise in sociology, language, understanding how to, technically, or meaning an in-depth understanding of bias is not only something you can understand with technology. So this suite of standards, I believe, is the largest of their kind, meaning AI ethics-oriented standards. The yellow means the standards are out in the world. They're finished, at least the first versions. They can be purchased or used. The ones that are in white, we still are working on them. And by we, I mean there's working groups, and people are, anyone on the call, you're welcome to join. I'll include my email address at the end of the call. But really, if you are interested in AI and ethics, joining a working group along these lines is one of the best ways to learn the actual specific ways that people are thinking about applied ethics with regards to artificial intelligence tools. So it's a really good opportunity if you want to join. Certified is a certification program we have around AI. I can tell you more about that if you're interested. We are very focused on keeping children safe through something called age-appropriate design. And also the logic here is to tell parents and caregivers of children that it's not just about saying my child is 16, they can or can't go on Facebook. It's really about educating people about how important their data is and their children's data is. And as I mentioned, risk, the EU is doing incredible work on risk approaches to AI. And one thing I want to be clear about, we have to identify risk and harm in the technologies we build. So when I say focus on human rights, et cetera, that does not mean we don't focus on risk as well. As engineers and data scientists, even though I'm not an engineer or data scientist, this is really step one, right? If you know you're building a tool that could harm someone, then you stop. That's, and keep working on it. So I just want to point here that the EU risk assessment is fantastic. So I don't mean to infer in any way that it's not an incredible starting point. It is. And by the way, I'll probably wait to the end to take questions if that's okay for everybody. I was recently in Korea last week, and so they're also doing interesting work on AI principles. And I've been around the world, as I mentioned, and different parts of the world will oftentimes have different, at least for me, unique principles that they're focusing on. And so this was interesting for me to see about. Okay. So moving on to Gen AI, or large language models, where I work, the IEEE Standards Association. Basically, these two slides, there's a lot of language here, so I won't read the whole thing. Basically, there's a lot of issues with generative AI that have not been present in other versions, other architectures of artificial intelligence. Excuse me, I have to sneeze. It's big allergy season. Excuse me. I know, I think it's pretty universal from what I hear globally. Now, when I talk about having issues with generative AI, that's actually what responsible technology, in my opinion, means. Meaning, I'm not saying I don't think technology is useful, and I'm not saying I have issues with artificial intelligence in general. I'm saying the architecture of large language models, there are a lot of issues that are, and again, in my expert opinion, really irresponsible, and that we need to address in terms of how we can prioritize people and planning. So I'm going to give you some examples. On April 3rd, I was using ChatGPT, the free version. And this is something I'll do often as like the annoying ethics person, which is I'll go to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and I'll type in the question, are you real? Those three words, are you real? R-E-A-L. And the goal there is to see, I'm testing for what's called anthropomorphism. And anthropomorphism is a common human trait. It means we as humans equate something that's not alive to being alive. Mostly like when we're kids, we have a teddy bear and we think the teddy bear is alive, and we actually believe that it's alive. And until our parents, and we get to a certain age and our parents teach us, or we find out that the teddy bear is not alive, we believe that. Now, anthropomorphism, in one sense, because it's natural, is not really the issue. It's where it's designed into a system where the designers know that humans are as adults as well, we're very open to being either tricked or manipulated by anthropomorphism, in this case, machines or tools like ChatGPT that say, how can I assist you today? Where in one sense, it seems quite innocent, right? Like, well, John, who cares? Everyone knows that the machine's not real. And the answer is, that's categorically not true. Who doesn't know it's not real are kids, younger people. Meaning I'm 56, so I'm used to, and I've worked in advertising, et cetera. I work in AI and ethics. I'm keenly aware that these tools are not alive. But if you are not aware of that, and you go to all these different rectangular boxes, a white screen and a rectangular box, that says, how may I assist you today? That means literally society is being trained that these tools are alive, right? So what I did in this ChatGPT session is I just said, please, I didn't say please because I don't feel the need to say please and thank you to machines, but I said, stop saying I. And I got a little angry, so you can see here. I said, used I again. This is what's fascinating to me is I'm an expert in AI and ethics, or at least I've been in the space for about 15 years. And I know the tools aren't real, but they still get me angry. And I start entering prompts as if I was speaking to a live person. But large language models, if you don't know the idea, they pull together information from other places that's pre-existing and kind of shove it together and then respond to a prompt. There's no person on the other end, right? But that said, the system, if I'm simply giving a very simple instruction, like I remember, back when I was in high school, I had a computer called a TRS-80, and you'd say like 10, go to 20, 20, go to 30. Like it was very simple coding or language, and I don't actually know how to code. But the point is to tell a system, a computational system, don't use the pronoun I. And then the system continues to use that pronoun. It's both a poorly designed system, and again, it's one that is training people that the tools are alive. And when people say, but that's not the goal, and we're training the system, and the answer is, it doesn't make a difference. Intentions, right? And what people say, that's one thing. But in terms of trustworthy tools, this system, at least on April 3rd, wasn't that hard. I said, stop using the pronoun I. And within one or two prompts, the system kept using that pronoun, right? It's training society that it's alive. That's what's happening. So here's something that I like reminding people. Now, when I talk about manipulation, I mentioned the chapter on effective computing and ethically aligned design. The technical side of effective computing, that means effective are emotions or human-computer interaction. If you tell someone, if you disclose certain things, hey, these tools aren't real, right? Then you move from what's called manipulation to nudging. Nudging is a tool like an app that you're using to lose weight, and you get a text that says, don't eat that extra burger today, whatever, right? But you've given the tool permission to access your data, and the nudge is sort of a reminder. This is a useful aspect of technology or artificial intelligence, what have you. When you're tracked through surveillance, capitalism, or whatever, and you don't really understand that you're being tracked, and then you're given an instruction of some kind, that's what's called manipulation. And the way to solve that is very simple: disclosure. Right now, disclosure is where there's an honest, very clear accountability for something that you're doing that a user needs to know about. This is not that. If you go to ChatGPT, again, the public version of it, you have to scroll to the bottom of the screen. So if you probably know this term, it's below the fold, right? Which means when you turn the computer on, all you see is that rectangular box. I'm ChatGPT, I'm Claude, how can I assist you today? You scroll down and it says this: ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important information. A lot of times over the past 15 or however many years, but especially with Gen AI, people are like defending different tools, and they'll say, well, humans make mistakes. And my answer is yes, they do, or yes, we do. But I give this example, which is an elevator. And if you saw an elevator that says this elevator can make mistakes, check important info, right? You wouldn't ride on the elevator. But this tool, people think, well, hey, it is disclosure, even though, again, it's below the fold, so most people don't see it. And in the sense of a tool that its primary function is you type something and then it gives answers, and it says it can make mistakes. I already gave one very simple example where I said, don't use the pronoun I. That wasn't a mistake. That was an instruction. And the system, we can call it a mistake. It's just programmed to not give the right answer. And then in terms of check important info, how do you check the information of a tool that is supposed to scan all the world's knowledge? and then you're asking it something, the system, and it comes back with an answer. If there aren't citations, and here what I mean by citations is certifications. You get in an elevator because you've been trained that elevators are safe. But if you actually ride in the elevator and look next to the buttons, I was just in Korea. I did this because I was thinking about this talk. You see a little certification in whatever language. It just means that the elevator has been certified by a person. And this is the difference. Where it says check important information and a human is asked to certify or create a safety way of checking that an elevator works, that's why you trust getting in an elevator. You would not get in an elevator that was made by people who don't know how to make elevators. At least you wouldn't want to, right? You also wouldn't get in an elevator where someone's like, I don't know if it works. I'm not sure. Pretty sure it's okay. You should probably check that, right? But you're not an elevator technician, and we are not supposed to be, or certainly the general public, people who can check large language model architectures. This is below the fold. That's called manipulation. So then, going back to my book, I asked this question: do I have worth? Right? And the answer here is quite lovely in one sense, right? Like, I recognize the tools. I favor Claude over ChatGPT responses in terms of the kind of poetic language that comes back. But this is really encouraging, reading it. What's not as encouraging is I literally could have written this actual language in the book you're looking at. And so this tool may have pulled language. By the way, I don't mean to sound that arrogant, but the point is that I know that someone else's language is what I'm reading here, not ChatGPT, right? Meaning aggregating other people's words and putting them together. It's an exciting tool. It's quite magical in one sense, but it's also not. It's taking other people's data and kind of reconfiguring it. But anyway, I asked the question, do I have worth? And then the tool said this: if you're feeling down or uncertain, it might help to talk about what you're going through. And what's inferred is keep prompting this machine, keep using this tool to talk to, because it might help, right? And in terms of like journaling, I've journaled before. It does help, right? Journaling where I'm writing something down, journaling to this tool, at least for me, I'm going to show you why it's not helpful and why I think it's irresponsible. The tool also said it's what makes you unique, right? In this case, John. Hey, John, your worth is not tied to a single moment. Me, I'm unique. But then first of all, I thought, well, hold on a second. A minute ago, you said that you might make mistakes. So wait, do I have worth? Am I unique? Because you just said you make mistakes, ChatGPT. And when I say you, I don't mean you like a person. I mean, this system said it makes mistakes. So am I unique or am I not unique? I think I'm unique, but I'm not unique. So I have worth. I don't have worth. Are you lying to me? And then here's something, it's a different tool, but it's related. It's a large language model oriented tool. I read about this in The Atlantic, the magazine, that Meta had put together this tool called LibGen. And I entered my name into it because someone said, enter your name in it as an author. And what it is, it's a data set that uses other people's information. And in this case, 5 or 6 of my articles for IEEE Where I Work, and my entire first book, 2009, Tactical Transparency. My entire book was used by this system without my permission, certainly without paying me any money, to be part of a data set that I didn't even know the book was in there until I checked The Atlantic. So now, am I unique? Am I unique? Do I have worth? What about the mistakes? The mistake here was I was not asked about having my book included in this data set. I was not paid as someone that worked on that book for 2 or 3 years. My publishers, Wiley Publishers, were not paid. That means this information, a lot of large language model companies use data without paying the original people money or honoring their intellectual property. That is called irresponsible. The shorter version of what it is theft. It's just theft. And people will say, well, information should be free. What about open source? These are different topics. They're related. They may sound the same, but they're not. Open source means if someone wants to come to me and say, hey, John, do you want your books to be open source so more people can read them? That's a good conversation to have. That's two entities, me and whoever, a person, talking about that opportunity. Then I'm interested. Who wants to read my information? Who wants to read my stuff? As compared to me going to a website and seeing that someone has used an entire book. Do you know how much work goes into a book? How many years of a person's life? I do. Written 3 of them, right? I'm supposed to trust these tools. You're supposed to trust these tools. The answer is no. So I want to get into now aspects of being responsible for society, because I've given a dark picture, but I also want to give a picture of what responsibility means. And responsibility in terms of society is also saying, is it responsible for a tool that steals someone's data to then be used for all these other, quote, great purposes? And my point is to say the functionality of the tool, as exciting as it can be, and how people use Gen AI, and I'm sure as I have, I use Gen AI not that often because of my issues with it, but I get why people like it and the value it supposedly brings. But this is still happening at the same time anyone is getting value. And the goal as a responsible technologist is to say, how can we have the good results of the tools while also having disclosure and not having IP theft, for instance? So what's one solution? One solution is to ask about what is society valuing, right? Ultimately, and this is one of the main things that society values with things like GDP and finance, which is efficiency. And efficiency is not evil. That's not really the right framing to think about these things. But it is a question of, if automation, sort of the justification for jobs being removed is because efficiency, right? Well, we do things faster and, quote, better. And keep in mind what better means, right? I just showed you all these examples where Gen AI categorically makes mistakes, and it says it makes mistakes. And then the efficiency, people tend to forget all the time it takes to look through results to see if there are mistakes. That's not really efficiency in the aggregate. Nonetheless, the logic is companies and governments can say, but efficiency, got to have efficiency. And in the West, a lot of times this means rationality, ethics, Greek-oriented ethics, for instance. It's really focused on rationality, right? Our cognition. But I want to point out one of the top papers I've ever read in AI. It's this one. It's called From Rationality to Relationality. It's a beautiful paper. And now in terms of solutions, et cetera, my friend Sibello Malambi wrote this paper, and it focuses on Ubuntu ethics. And in terms of ethical practices, there's something called utilitarianism, which is sort of like the idea of examining the best for the most people. Deontological ethics, I'm being very general. How do we do the right thing? Virtue ethics, and in this case, Ubuntu ethics is a type of virtue ethic, is how do we help other people? And in terms of efficiency, it's interesting, like, how do you help other people? You can say, how can I be more efficient in helping other people? But to a certain degree, the question then really is, how do I help other people? And maybe efficiency is a factor, maybe not. But if you've been reading the screen while I've been talking, this idea of Ubuntu, it's really a recognition that we don't exist without other people. And it's not just a warm, fuzzy feeling. Kant said, I think, therefore I am, right? Rationality. I exist because I think. Ubuntu ethics actually says that's not all. You don't exist just because you think. We could be living in a simulation. We exist because we exist in community. We exist because we have the opportunity to help and love other people. I have worth in relation to others. And our worth exists in relation to others. By the way, I have about 5 minutes left and I can take questions. And I'm going to put this out there. Our worth and wealth exists in love. And I don't just mean romantic love. I mean love, recognition of the community. One of my favorite philosophers is a German philosopher named Karl Rahner, and he has this quote: the inmost core of reality is love. And this diagram I like looking at sometimes. On the right are all the different realities or at least most of the ones I can think of. Augmented reality, extended reality, the spatial web, and then dreams, right? Dreams are my reality. I had some dreams last night. Death, my dad has died. Different people I love have died. What if at the inmost center of all those things, it's love? It's not efficiency. It just isn't, right? Efficiency is a useful output for some things. But I have two kids. They're now 21 and 19. You know what I don't do? I don't spend time with them and go, I spent 2 hours with my kids this weekend. Next week, I'm going to make it 1 hour. And you know what else? Gen AI can replace me and they can be the parent to my kids. Does that sound absurd? Well, I point these things out for the past 12 or 15 years I've been in the space, and they sound less and less absurd the more that society says efficiency is everything. It is not. It is not. It's not about love. What if at the center of everything, and again, I'm not just talking romantic love, love with a parent, love with a friend, love with your community, right? Love of a craft, love of learning how to play guitar, right? I can say, how do I play guitar into a tool? But I've played guitar for over 40 years. Blood, sweat, and tears to learn how to play those chords and then get on stage and to be with other people. So in closing, I'm now working on a project called Planet Positive 2030. And you can see the subtitle of our paper. It's called Strong Sustainability by Design. I'll unpack that a little. But this subtitle is kind of an extension of the subtitle of Ethically Aligned Design, prioritizing ecosystem and human flourishing with technology-based solutions. That's it. If you're asking me, and thank you for listening, and Sudha for the opportunity, and Debica, et cetera. If you're thinking, what do we do? How do we actually be ethical with our AI and our tools? For me, it's always going to come back to this prioritizing. The first thing to wonder about, think about, and to prioritize is how are we taking care of the whole planet, not just emissions, but biodiversity, water, right? And let me give you an example here. Right now, in terms of data centers for Gen AI, and there's a lot of good people writing about this, energy and water with regards to data centers. A lot of times people think, and I have a big bottle of water here, I'll show you what I mean, right? Let's pretend this is a data center, right? Working on Gen AI. And what people will say is, well, how can we make this as efficient as possible? What that means is the computers, the servers that do all the work with all the Gen AI and cryptocurrency, whatever, they get really hot. So you use water and air conditioning to keep the computers cold. Now, sometimes the data centers use chemical coolants. Other times there's fresh air locally, fine. But the point is let's say they use water either for the air conditioning or maybe hydraulics, meaning the water to power the energy that powers the data centers. One way or the other, water is often involved in data centers that drive Gen AI. Part of the reason these tools are so massively irresponsible is all the stuff I already said, IP violations, lack of disclosure and anthropomorphism, and then anything that you type in that prompt, anything, whether you're trying to cure cancer, you're redoing your resume, whatever it is, it uses water and energy, right? Now, what you're looking at on the screen is what's called weak versus strong sustainability. And the reason we called our paper Strong Sustainability is, and I'll go back to the water in a second. On the left, most people, when they talk about what's called ESG, environmental, social, or governance regulations or understanding of how to take care of the planet, they think of these three circles, where in the middle is this idea of sustainable development, right? And that's useful, has been for years. But what we advocate in our paper with the methodology and the logic of strong sustainability is this idea of these three circles, but they all live within each other. In the center is economics, right? This is the efficiency discussion. Everyone thinks about GDP and finances and productivity and profit, right? Okay, but that's economics. The wrapper around that is the society in which you live. I'm in New Jersey, so the US, maybe you're in Europe. I know Ellen, I think maybe is someone's from Africa, right? So the society means the cultural aspect, the region where one lives, but above all of that, But all of that for all of us is nature, the beautiful planet. I use the pronoun her for the planet because I like thinking about the planet as being maternal. And if you think about the planet living around everything, then what that means is when we go back to that data center, the data center does not live in isolation. Even if we're able to use less water in this data center, but all this Gen AI is still running all this computation. Nearby the data center, and here I have a coffee cup. Thanks for letting me use the visuals. But let's pretend the coffee cup has water from an aquifer. An aquifer is like the local water source, right? A water basin, a reservoir. It just means in a physical location, water has to come from somewhere, right? And I used to think, people will say to me, but hey, in an aquifer, the water gets replenished when there's rain, right? Well, first of all, it's not entirely accurate. Aquifers naturally sometimes take as long as 16,000 years for water to get replaced. Also, if there's rain in a certain area, but then there's condensation, meaning water evaporates from the ground, as that water evaporates and goes into clouds and what have you, it doesn't mean the rain is going to come down in the same place. So water comes up in one place, it comes down somewhere else. The point being that factually, aquifers around the world are draining faster than they're being replenished. And then when you have a water hungry tool or whatever nearby that takes more of that water, it is factually inaccurate to say, well, the aquifer is getting replaced with the water, right? Meaning just because I say it or I want it to be true, right? I'm not saying there's anyone doing anything illegal or immoral per se. But responsibility means saying, and this is a strong sustainability methodology and responsible mindset. Hey, everybody, hold on. AI is great. Ethics are great. Responsibility is great. Hold on. Before we build anything, and that means before these computer servers start running on any kind of AI or cryptocurrency, how much water is in this aquifer nearby? Because this data center is using water. Do we know? And if the answer is no, guess what my response is going to be? Let's measure the water. That's it. Otherwise, it's not just irresponsible, it's deadly because water is pretty important. And also then what we start to realize is this data center doesn't live in isolation, not only of this aquifer, but of the people in the region, the farmers in the region, the farms, the indigenous communities, right? All the different species, the animals, the trees, biodiversity. And so when you know how much water is available to everybody, then you also can start saying, hey, as important as different technology tools may be, is it more important to run Gen AI? Not all AI. Again, you can see I'm not a big fan of Gen AI. But is it so important to run a Gen AI that we lose water going to people and the planet to keep the planet safe for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 generations? The short answer is no. It is not so important. We don't need Gen AI. We need water, right? And again, before it sounds like I'm being negative to technology or AI, I'm not. I'm saying I am more focused on protecting the planet and all people by saying, do we know how much water is here? Do you know how much energy is available for the whole region? And if the answer is no, then we cannot call anything we're doing responsible technology or AI. This paper, I can send you links for this paper. This was written by a bunch of people from IBM and Microsoft and Salesforce. Pretty simple answer. And again, sort of a formula or a tool, right? I can send you this paper. It's got actual ways to start rethinking about how to prioritize people and planet as the metrics for responsible AI. Is efficiency the primary metric for responsible AI? Not at all. Not at all. Is it what's being used? Right? Like people can say we want responsible AI for good. But if the primary metric is efficiency, my answer, as I hopefully have at least shown you what I mean, is that's not true. It could be someone's intention for it to be true, but it's not. If we're not measuring the water, it's not actually prioritizing people on the planet. This is my final slide, and I get passionate, but I don't mean to sound angry, except that I do get, pretty passionate about protecting the planet, being a father with kids, and being someone that wants this technology. I love the technology. I just don't like being tricked or fooled by people that are manipulating me or data to get us to buy things. Like, I have friends who work in advertising. I've worked in advertising. There's nothing wrong with saying to people, hey, buy my water, buy my coffee. That's different than hiding all these different tools and giving us this box that says, how can I assist you today? With the message that the tools are alive and that efficiency is the most important thing. Tools are not alive. Efficiency is not the most important thing. I believe the most important thing is love. I believe it's why we actually live our lives. And if we want to love our kids well, love future generations well, love all people, then we have to prioritize people and planet as the metrics for responsible AI. And that's how we can also really discover our worth, living for others, caring for others. And that's kind of what artificial intelligence is all about. I really appreciate your listening, and I'd be happy to take questions. I know we have about 9 or 10 minutes. And thank you again, Sudha, for the opportunity.
That was amazing. I actually have a question because you were talking about strong sustainability. And I was wondering, how do we get companies and organizations to think about approaching their AI ethics with that in mind? Because for me, it's just so hard. And from my perspective, I feel like the hardest part is to get these companies to see that there is profit in being sustainable. So if you were, consulting a business, how would you start, or how would you have them start out that process?
It's a great question. I mean, for years, I've faced the challenge of people saying, how do I make sustainability profitable for my business? Which is, I'm sort of going with what you said, Devika. I think first of all is hopefully the data center example I've given, I think people start to understand. Technically, there's a financial term called natural capital accounting, where I kind of don't like starting from this standpoint, but it at least helps in one sense, where people don't care about the planet at all, right? I'm not saying that was your question, but even if they don't care about taking care of the planet, right? And I'm not trying to judge, I'm just saying that may not be their thing. Is natural capital accounting in the past couple of years, sometimes called nature-based accounting, is a recognition something like water as a resource, it's not actually measured, and I mean literally accounted for, meaning economically accounting oriented, marked on a book, right? Water, for instance, if you're a beer company like Schlitz or whatever, right? The main ingredient for beer is water and hops, right? But water, what you need to account for that water is, do we have enough water to make our beer, right? But as a rule, GDP, gross domestic product, it measures as an output only the beer that comes out of the company, right? So if you think about that, why things like efficiency only is so myopic, meaning it's not seeing beyond a tiny way of looking at things, is you're only accounting for the product once it's out in the world. But if you run out of water, you are out of luck. I was going to say Schlitz out of luck, and I just did. Enjoy. So the point there is that natural capital accounting recognizes, wait a second, that water is actually worth something, maybe million, billion, trillion dollars. Now, here's the problem I just want to point out. When people ask, what is the profit for my company? And we have to start from a framing of economics. Remember those 3 circles, right? Economics is the center. Really, my larger goal is to show people, as hard as it is, short-term sustainability and profit may mean understanding the economics of accounting for water, as I've just mentioned. The longer reality is not just because, oh, I love the planet. It's what are called planetary boundaries. Places like the Rome Report talk about 9 planetary boundaries where we've gone beyond certain restrictions in terms of the planet. And so teaching companies that making profit, we all have to make profit to survive, but the efficiency and growth logic of infinite growth, that's where I usually try to start with companies. And there's a book I'll recommend here called Net Positive by Paul Pullman, who ran Unilever for 10 years. That's a great book to start with as well. Anyway, I'll pause there because I want to see if there's more questions.
Yeah, the floor is open. Does anyone have any questions? I still have another follow-up, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one. Hi, John. Um, Apologies, my video isn't working for some reason, so I'm stuck with the IT issue here, but I hope you can hear me okay.
I can.
Grant. So thank you for this presentation. Excellent. And I recently did a talk on on same topic, planetary boundaries, as well. And one of the points and it keeps running in my mind every time I run into this topic is, there's solution today that exists around desalination of water, right? In that sense, the salt water is abundant, right? I'm not sure if in the data center world, if anybody has applied this solution wherein a lot of these large data centers today, they set up the data center right next to the power grid, and they have power grid generation, set up, and at the same time, in parallel, they have the data center set up for ease of connection and everything else, all the commercials associated with that and efficiencies associated with that, right? Similarly, one of the ideas that keeps coming to my mind is the desalination of water, right? If this setup exists next to an ocean where, we probably have some sort of a system where water is desalinated and then used, and then it some sort of circular kind of a system, right? Is that a thing that has ever come up in the discussions? Do you know of any data center, leaders who use such kind of an approach, or is this even in the vicinity of, considered as a possible solution?
It's a great point. The short answer is yes, as far as I know, meaning I think it's an excellent point, and um, I hope it was clear that anything that can be done in terms of a circular design methodology, I'm in, right? It's sort of a must-have.
Right.
What I found is that working in the regenerative, most people know about regenerative agriculture. Regenerative sustainability is sort of taking the circular design logic and sort of just expanding it. And my point here is that, like, let's say the desalination happens, a lot of data centers are using chemical coolants or
Yeah.
they're using gray water, right? The point still is, though, if this makes sense from the analogy I gave, let's say every single one of those really fantastic, and they are, circular design solutions happens for this data center. If the nearby aquifer and water is still not measured, the likelihood, I'm not guaranteeing, is, again, I'm not trying to be negative to what you said. Those things are excellent and wonderful, and oftentimes are ignored when data centers also are put into places like Chile, like Spain, where everybody knows, even before the data center comes in, this is a drought-ridden area, right? And so
Yeah.
that's just absolutely irresponsible. But anyway, my point there is that, like, my hope is it made sense that all those great solutions that you mentioned, and Nagarantha, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, yes, but also the strong sustainability logic is to say, let's do all that work that we can while also measuring and recognizing that water nearby, because the full systems
Of
design.
course, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But
Thank you.
yes, that was a long answer on my part, but all that stuff sounds great. And if you could put any links in the chat room, those are always a great yes and logic to tell people about.
Yeah, but has anybody tried this as an approach? I know measurement is a key point there, but do you know of any data center leaders who have taken this approach? Of course, it has its side effects as well, because desalinating the water, the amount of salination required, it will have its own, side effects, and that balancing is needed to sort of not disturb the planetary boundaries as well. That's another subject altogether. But do you know of any data center leaders who have tried this approach?
In terms of the actual data centers themselves, since I can't give the name of one off the top of my head, the Uptime Institute is the association that I go to. It's a data center association. So if you want to check them out, I would recommend their reports. I find, because again, I think if I dug into some IEEE resources, I probably could find one. But it's, I know desalination has a lot of advantages to it. especially where there's, places where ocean or seawater meets fresh water. So
Right.
it
So
sounds
Google,
fantastic.
so Google has one in Norway.
All right. By the way, hi,
And
Jan. How you doing?
yeah, good. Hey, John. So Google has one in Norway, and ironically, um, you don't need the water because it's on the coast. But they need to take the salt out of the air to stop the servers being corroded. But
Oh, okay.
there's actually a few. But here's the interesting question that I've got, John, for you. So Russia's got nuclear power data centers. So the power issue can be solved. We know if we put data centers next to the coast, that can be solved. The question I have, and it's in relation to something Paul Shar said about how you regulate AI by regulating the chipsets and having the global data centers. The question I have is the motivation for the government, because at the moment in time, the motivation for the government is, if we were to be cynical, which is um, governments like to live in nice, warm places. They want to make as much money as possible, so we're going to put a data center in the absolutely wrong place. Whereas if we truly had, if we truly got on as nations, do you know what I mean? It's this idea of data centers are big money just now. And if we can fix the data center problem, like Paul Shore said it himself, regulate the chipsets, you can, if you can fix the data center problem, you could have them in cooler climates. But I just like everything boils down to politics. And when we talk about ethics, the companies that are setting the ethics are less than ethical. So I was just trying to work out what your take on that was without trying to be political, because I'm from Scotland and our politics suck.
Well, I know we're at 1 o'clock, so I'll try to make this fast. And I'm speaking now very much as John, right? Not as IEEE. But most days I wake up very depressed because I believe what I just said to you. I actually believe it can work, mainly in the sense, I think, as a parent. I'm finding that in the US where I live, and politics suck here as well, it's easy to get divisive over you name it. So what I'm trying to identify lately in my life is, where do I find a bond with people? And usually it's around parenting, even if someone's young enough to not have kids, because there you kind of inherently have to think about the future. And to your point, Alan, like the data centers, like I didn't talk about, if you look into what's happened in the last couple of years, data centers are big money, and the data center problem, as you put it, for me is I'm trying to frame it, like nuclear, I know what you're saying, but like nuclear solving the problem, like it just came from Korea, nuclear. I know you know this, Alan, but I'm just saying, like in technology circles, when people say things like nuclear is or will solve this, what you and I know is that's kind of a big statement. What does that mean? What about fallout from nuclear stuff? Not joking, the actual fallout of stuff. Is it available to everyone? Economically, is it available? And also the logic that we need these data centers because of Gen AI. A lot of what I'm trying to point out in my work is to say, hold on, all the things I mentioned. And by the way, Microsoft's Satya Nadella said 2 months ago, hey, everybody, Gen AI is not making money. This is what I don't get, Alan and everyone else. Like, if it was making money hand over fist for companies, I get it. But the main money, to your point, that's being made a lot of times is with people putting data centers into locations, paying local governments money, and the data centers get going at the harm, overt harm. Spain and Chile are two examples. The Netherlands, another already precedent, or Meta. It's in the look it up. Meta went to the Netherlands and was like, data center in a drought-ridden area, and guess what happened? More drought. And then, Debic, I totally get your question, but it's so challenging for me to talk to companies about what profit means when part of the logic is using tools that I just demonstrated, for me, it's not that hard. Like, I work at IEEE. I can't submit a paper to IEEE without 48 citations, and that's good, right? John Havens thinks, well, that's okay, John, but what do you have to back that? Well, I'm quoting Allen, I'm quoting Suda, I'm quoting these people. Well, they're trusted. I'm quoting this organization, that organization. You can check this data, check that data, check this data. That's what responsibility means in the academic world. But now these tools are like, whatever, type something, and the response says whatever we want, uses water and energy, harvests human intellectual property, right? That tool stole my book. That's it. I'm in the Screen Actors Guild. I used to be an actor. I'm a union actor, right? So these avatars using people's faces. Anyway, I get passionate because sometimes it is, and Alan, thanks for this, and I know we have to probably wind up.
John,
okay.
I want to
Yeah,
ask one thing. Renee has a question. I'm sure Deepika will field it, and she's kind of going to close us off soon.
Okay,
So
good,
I
because I
wanted
can
to
keep going. Thank
so
you.
I wanted to jump in. I hope it's okay with you, Deepika. There's a whole discussion trend about how humans have adopted over times, and it just bugs me when I see technologists, and I'm one of them, right, writing about how the sewing machine changed sewing, cloth making, and still there was a whole industry, and our people lived in caves and adapted to technology. They cite history and anthropology with no knowledge of anthropology of many caves and many people, and civilization evolved over time. So Renee has a question, not to hijack your question, Renee, but Renee's question is, as evolution shows, human adapt to every condition. Is privacy outdated? So my bigger question on top of Renee is, are we doing a disservice to ourselves, not questioning what is right and wrong in this moment in the technology and the data centers, and thinking that we just have to take everything and figure out a way for it to work for us?
Well, it's a great question, and Renee, thank you for your question, and I'll try to answer somewhat briefly. And thank you again, Sudha and Devika, and all of you. Alan, great to see you. And so first of all, privacy is an interesting word. I'm going to use the term agency because, first of all, humans can't evolve right now in terms of our privacy where we aren't given tools to have privacy. So there's a standard at IEEE. It's called IEEE 7012. This standard is designed to give people their own tools to create their own personal terms and conditions that they can have made available at the algorithmic level. So we hear about AI agents all the time, right? And you hear about the people making a lot of these tools saying privacy is dead, privacy is dead. And to your point, Renee, I think I understand the framing of that. Is privacy dead? The answer is the people that want your data will say whatever they want to get your data. So newsflash, first of all, privacy is not dead. That's absurd, right? You go into a room and you don't have surveillance on, you take a shower, whatever it is. But I'm going to put that over here because the opportunity, the need is to give all of us on this call a tool, a website you go to, and you type in your personal terms and conditions. I can send you information about 7012, this standard. All it means is that then you're given what's called parity, P-A-R-I-T-Y. At an algorithmic level, if there was a tool that represented John C. Havens, that was an agent for me that could interact with all these other Gen AI or other tools, right? I actually have a parity and equality for these different tools. So first of all, the resilience to deal with any privacy issues, we don't have it. Humans I've been trying, many people have been trying to adapt humans to remember that the core of most AI, if not all, is access to human data, where if it's not given freely and with agency, then it's not really a tool that's using it responsibly. So we haven't been given the opportunity to have resilience as humans in terms of privacy because of advertisers, surveillance, capitalism, money, interests that don't want to give us access to our data. It's not privacy, it is ownership. I wrote that book for 2.5, 3 years. I wrote it, and someone else stole it. That's it. That's not privacy. That's theft, right? So that's part one. The other part of it, to your bigger question, Suda. And here, let's see. Everything's in the hands of consumers. Yeah, here's the thing. I don't like the term consumer. And everything, I know where you're coming from in general. By the way, I don't want to assume anything, so I'm just gonna. And we lose privacy only in prisons, and no one has adapted that. Yeah, that's true. Although, the harvesting of people's data in American prisons is pretty horrible. Anyway, I know we're at time pretty much, so let me just say this as a positive thing. First of all, the opportunity for people to recognize that their data is precious. That's the part that I like telling people about. Because then all these other things that come back, but people don't care about their data. There's no way to protect those things. That's incorrect, right? People do care about their data, their medical data, right? If someone's like, hey, can I give, if your mom is suffering from cancer, can I tell everyone about it and give away her data? Your answer would be no, right? So people care about their data, young people, right? The other thing about data I say all the time is it doesn't make a difference if someone cares about their data or not, right? Does it make a difference if someone cares about human rights or not? If someone doesn't know that their human rights exist, does that mean that's okay? It's the same with our data. Our data represents who we are, and it actually comprises our identity and who we are. It's precious. Anything. I probably should suit it. I know we're over, so it's your class. As you probably know, I can talk for another 2 hours, but I will say this. Thank you so much. I'm happy to come back. I really appreciate the opportunity.
No, this is good. Deepika, can we wrap up and close out? We should bring John back. This has been fun.
I know I don't want to wrap up, but we have to. But this was a great conversation. I love talking about this. I would love for you to come back and honestly give us a walkthrough of how you've talked to companies day by day and worked with them and consulted them on the ones that you feel are doing this in their own successful way, how they go about it, what the results have been. So would love to learn more about that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. And thanks for everyone's questions. If I didn't get a chance to fully ask them, and great to meet you all. And Alan, great to see you here.
John will tag you on Business School of AI where we posted the event. And some people thought that maybe the event was live stream, and so I had to send the email and bring them back. So thank you, Alan, for coming. This is good. So we will tag you, and maybe there will be more questions. We'll follow up, but we'll bring you back if we can have another discussion. The best conversations are one that get us to think and feel like we ran out of time. So thank you for this.
Well, my pleasure. And I'd be happy to come back. Thanks to you and Devika and everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.